Hey guys, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the Null Coalesce operator, which is very simple but also very useful. Okay, so what it does is it allows us to check for a certain value to see if it's null or if it's not there, and if it's not, then we get to define it as whatever we want, some kind of default. So for instance, let's create a variable and we'll say user, we're going to say user equals username, and then the null coalesce operator is represented with 2 question marks. Alright, so here we're going to say guest. Alright, and then let's go ahead and let's echo user. Alright, so if we reload, we get guessed. Alright, because what it did is it's going to check to see if this is actually something, if it's not null and it actually exists. Alright, if we look around the page, you can see that it doesn't exist. So what it does is it takes the value to the right and uses that. Alright, now if I was to create username, we'll say Brad, and then we save that, reload, and now we're getting Brad because this exists, so that's what we're using. Alright, so you can see how helpful this is. Now there's a ton of ways to get this functionality, but this gives us a nice standard. So let's take a look at some of the other ways, some of the old ways of doing this same thing. Alright, so I'm going to comment that out for now, and let's do an if statement, okay, an if else. Okay, so this will do the same exact thing. We're going to check, let's say if empty, we're going to use the empty function, username, then we're going to set the user variable to guest, and then we'll say else, then user is going to equal the username. Save it, reload, we get Brad. If we just get rid of this completely, we get guest. Okay, so that gives us the same functionality, but obviously this is a lot easier to write. Alright, it's also better practice. So let's comment this out. Now you're probably thinking, what about a ternary operator, which is also only one line. So let's take a look at that. So we'll say user, and we'll set that equal, and here what we're going to test is username. If it's there, then we're going to set this user to username. If not, we're going to set it to guest. Alright, so let's see if that works. We reload, we get Brad. If I get rid of that, we get guest. Okay, so this really isn't much longer than this, but this isn't the best practice. Alright, and the reason for that is that if that value doesn't exist, if username doesn't exist, then it's going to raise an e-notice. Okay, it's going to raise a notice or a warning. Alright, this will not. Okay, this was made to fix that. So let's get rid of that. And I'm going to uncomment this. Make sure it still works. Now another great thing about using the null coalesce is that we don't have to just have one value here. Okay, we can actually put in something else, like let's say my user, and then we'll put another null coalesce operator. So save that, reload. We still get Brad because what it's doing is it's checking for a username. If it's there, that's the first one it's going to check. If it's there, then that's what it's going to use. Now let's take that away and reload, and you can see we're getting guessed. It didn't break. What it did is it looked for username, didn't find it, looked for my user, didn't find it, and then went with the default of guest. Alright, so let's say my user, and we'll set it to Joe. Reload, and now you can see we get Joe. Now if we have username and my user, Let's see what happens there. So we'll say bill, reload, we get bill. All right, the reason for that is it tests from left to right. So it's going to look at this first. If it's there, it's going to return that and just ignore these completely. If this isn't there and that's there, it'll use that. If none of these are there, it's going to use the default. Okay. Now, a common scenario for using this would be to check for a get request or check for parameters in the URL. All right, so let me just show you that real quick. I'm going to just make sure all this stuff is commented out. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll say username, username equals, and then to get the parameters we can use $_get, which is a super global, and we want to look for the username, double question marks, and here we'll say no user specified. Alright, and then down here we're going to echo out username. So let's go ahead and save that and reload, and we get no user specified. Now to actually make a get request through the URL, we can just go, we'll say the name of the file, index.php, and then we're going to say username equals Ted. And now you can see it's going to spit out Ted. Okay, because we're looking for that username parameter and it's here. So what this would be good for is if, let's say, we have an application where we have profiles of a user. If the visitor just goes to index.php and doesn't have a user, then you can redirect or set a message, whatever you'd like. If it is there, then you could continue and go to Ted's page and get all of his information. Another thing we could use this for is form submits. Alright, so let me give you an example of that. Okay, so down here we're going to end our PHP, and let's create a form using HTML. Okay, so we'll just have input, we'll give it a type of text, we'll give it a name of username. Alright, and let's do a button. Okay, now in the form we're going to set the method to post, and we're going to set the action. Now we want this to go to the page we're on, so we could put the name of our file, or we can use PHP echo, use the server super global, and we want in here PHP _self. Alright, and that references the actual page we're on. Alright, so now up here, let's create a variable called username, and we're going to set it equal to post username, and then we're going to use the Null Coalesce Operator. Okay, if there's no username, we'll say guest. Alright, and then under here we're going to echo username. Okay, let's go back to our page, and actually what I want to do here is echo out hello and then the username. Okay, so we get hello guest. If I type in my name now and we submit, it now changes to hello Brad. So that's another situation where the Null Coalesce Operator can come in handy. Alright, very clean, very short. So that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you found it useful, and I will see you in the next one.